Charlie Kirk was born on October 14, 1993, in Arlington Heights, Illinois. He grew up in a middle-class family, his father a project architect and his mother a homemaker. As a teenager, Charlie was ambitious. He dreamed big, spoke loud, and questioned everything. But politics wasn't always part of the plan. That changed during high school, when he volunteered for a local Republican campaign. It was there he found his purpose, to speak for the youth who, in his eyes, were being ignored. What started as a small spark in suburban Chicago would soon become one of the loudest political movements of his generation. By the time Charlie Kirk was 18, he was already making waves in conservative circles. He wrote political blogs, debated online, and even appeared on national radio, a teenager challenging professors and politicians. In 2012, he founded Turning Point USA, an organization dedicated to promoting free markets, limited government, and conservative values among students. With no college degree and little funding, he built something powerful, a movement run by youth for youth. What made Kirk different wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Bold, unapologetic, direct. Some called it courage, others called it provocation. Turning Point USA quickly became a household name across college campuses in America. With slogans like "Big Government Sucks" and "Socialism Sucks," the group gained massive online attention. Kirk's team focused on viral videos, influencer partnerships, and youth events, creating a new kind of conservative media presence. By 2016, TPUSA was organizing national conferences featuring well-known politicians and public figures. Supporters saw it as a revival of student conservatism. Critics saw it as the rise of political populism among young voters. Either way, Charlie Kirk had built an empire, and he wasn't slowing down. In 2016, the election of Donald Trump changed American politics forever. And it changed Charlie Kirk's career, too. Kirk became one of Trump's most vocal defenders among young voters. He hosted rallies, spoke on major news networks, and founded Turning Point Action, the political arm of TPUSA. His message connected deeply with a new generation of conservatives, patriotic, bold, and online. But with popularity came controversy. Critics accused him of spreading misinformation and polarizing young Americans. Supporters said he was finally giving conservatives the voice they deserved. Love him or hate him, Charlie Kirk had become impossible to ignore. As Kirk's fame grew, so did the criticism. He became a lightning rod for America's cultural battles, from campus free speech to vaccine debates and election integrity. His podcast, The Charlie Kirk Show, climbed to the top of political charts. Millions tuned in daily to hear his opinions, raw, confident, and often divisive. But behind the spotlight was a man constantly under attack. Online hate, protests at events, and non-stop media scrutiny tested his resilience. To his followers, he was a fearless truth-teller. To his critics, he was a master manipulator. Yet one thing remains certain. Charlie Kirk had reshaped how America's youth engaged with politics. As Charlie Kirk's following grew, so did the tension around him. His bold style challenged political correctness, and that made him both a hero and a target. Supporters celebrated his courage to say what others wouldn't, but critics accused him of spreading anger instead of ideas. University campuses became battlegrounds. At some, students cheered his name. At others, protests tried to shut his events down. Whether one agreed or disagreed, everyone was talking about Charlie Kirk. And that, he often said, was the point. With The Charlie Kirk Show climbing to the top of Apple Podcasts and YouTube charts, Kirk's influence reached beyond the classroom. He interviewed governors, senators, and pastors, shaping public conversation one episode at a time. His organization, Turning Point USA, grew into a political powerhouse with millions of followers and high-profile donors. But as his audience expanded, his message became sharper. He spoke on faith, culture, and identity, topics that struck deep emotional chords across America. For many, Charlie was a truth-teller unafraid to stand alone. For others, he was a symbol of division in an already fractured nation. No public figure rises without controversy, and Charlie Kirk was no exception. Journalists questioned his use of data and the funding behind his movement. Fact-checkers disputed several claims made on his show. He was accused of amplifying conspiratorial ideas, charges he strongly denied. Kirk responded that the media feared voices like his, voices that challenged the narrative. In interviews, he maintained that disagreement was proof he was making a difference. "If they're attacking you," he once said, "it means you're over the target." Behind the speeches and spotlight, there was also exhaustion. Constant travel, daily backlash, and the pressure of defending every word began to take its toll. Friends noticed he'd grown quieter off camera. Some said he struggled to separate his public image from his private self. For years, he carried both praise and hate, often on the same day. He once wrote, "I've learned that leadership isn't glamorous. It's lonely." To the outside world, he was confident and composed, but behind closed doors, the weight of his own movement was becoming heavy. In the spring of 2025, Charlie Kirk returned to a college campus in Utah, the same kind of stage where his journey had begun more than a decade earlier. The event was meant to be a discussion about free speech. Instead, it became a confrontation. As he took the stage, tension filled the air. Protests outside, heated chants inside. Moments later, chaos erupted. Gunshots, screams, confusion. When the dust settled, the news spread across every screen in America. Charlie Kirk, shot dead during a live university event. A nation that had argued about him for years suddenly fell silent. The morning after the tragedy, America woke in disbelief. News channels looped the same footage. A live event turned nightmare. Within hours, messages poured in from across the country. Supporters wept. Critics stood silent. Political leaders, from both sides, offered condolences, acknowledging his passion and his influence. Whether loved or opposed, everyone agreed on one thing. Charlie Kirk had changed the tone of political discussion in America, and his sudden death left a void no one could fill. As the shock began to fade, debate returned. Some mourned the death of a patriot, a man who stood up for faith, freedom, and traditional values. Others saw his story as a warning of how fierce political division could consume even its strongest voices. Social media filled with arguments disguised as condolences. People weren't just mourning Charlie Kirk, they were mourning what America had become. A nation where disagreement too often turned into hate. In the days that followed, all eyes turned to Turning Point USA, the organization he built from scratch at just 19. Would it survive without him? Inside the organization, leaders held emergency meetings. Some called for a pause to reflect. Others pushed to keep the mission alive, to continue what Kirk had started. They promised not to let his voice die. But without his energy, charisma, and direction, the movement felt uncertain. A new chapter was beginning, one written without its founder. In the weeks that followed, documentaries, podcasts, and opinion columns revisited his life in detail. They examined his impact, his rhetoric, and the controversy that followed him everywhere. Some called him a visionary who woke up a generation. Others labeled him a provocateur who fueled division. But even his harshest critics admitted one truth: he had changed the way America's youth saw politics. He turned political apathy into activism, and silence into participation. No matter the perspective, his influence was undeniable. Away from the cameras, Charlie Kirk was known for his discipline and drive. Friends described him as loyal, intense, and endlessly curious. He often spoke about faith, about purpose, about the future of America. And even his fiercest opponents could not deny his dedication. In the end, he was more than a political symbol. He was a man, imperfect, passionate, and determined to make his mark on the world. Charlie Kirk's story reminds us that influence is powerful, and that words, once spoken, can shape a nation's soul. After Charlie Kirk's passing, the world he built refused to fade. Turning Point USA, once a college project, became a legacy organization. Young leaders stepped forward, carrying his message of faith, freedom, and American values. They called themselves the next generation of Turning Point. Their goal wasn't to replace him, but to continue the vision he started, to educate, to debate, to challenge. Across campuses, students spoke his name with respect, not just as a leader, but as a reminder that one person can change everything. Over time, the anger surrounding his death turned into reflection. Students who once argued with him began rewatching his speeches, not for politics, but for understanding. They realized that beyond the controversy, Charlie Kirk was trying to spark something deeper, a conversation about what it means to believe in something larger than yourself. Podcasters, journalists, and former critics revisited his old clips, and many admitted, even if they disagreed with him, Charlie had forced people to think, to question, to respond. And that was the foundation of his power. Years later, his name still sparks discussion. Was he a defender of free speech or a master of political polarization? Was he shaping minds or dividing them? Historians call him a product of the digital revolution, a man who understood social media better than any politician of his time. Every generation has figures who redefine the limits of influence. Charlie Kirk was one of them. Loved by many, criticized by others, but never ignored. Charlie Kirk's strategies became a blueprint for the next era of influencers. His use of storytelling, emotional conviction, and relentless messaging inspired a wave of new creators across both sides of the political divide. Even those who once opposed him now use his tactics, proof that influence often outlives intention. The cultural echo he left behind reshaped youth politics in America. He made ideology digital, turning belief into content and content into movement. In that sense, Charlie Kirk's voice never really went silent. Charlie Kirk's journey was one of vision and conflict, passion and imperfection. He changed conversations, challenged systems, and stood firm for what he believed in, right or wrong. He showed that one voice, when amplified by conviction, can move a generation. And even now, years after his final speech, his words continue to ripple across classrooms, podcasts, and social feeds. History will debate him. Followers will defend him. Critics will question him. But everyone will remember him. If this story made you think, please like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Your engagement helps keep these real stories alive, stories of influence, truth, and legacy. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful documentaries about the people who shaped the world, in the light and in the shadows.